looking at the flowing river before me. I could never have imagined that the man who once called me his salvation would become my executioner. Adrian had one inviolable weakness: his new wife. For her sake, he stripped me of my position as his legitimate wife just before the new year, relegating me to concubine status so she could stand in the rightful place during the ancestral ceremonies. On the day of the ceremony, she stumbled and fell into the lake. Despite everything, I couldn't bear to watch her drown, so I dove in to save her. When Adrian arrived, he didn't even glance my way. Instead, he ordered his men to seize me and coldly pronounced his judgment. "You must have pushed Celeste into the lake out of jealousy, trying to harm her. Since you cannot conduct yourself properly as a concubine, I shall teach you how to behave as one." Through my tears, I tried to explain, pleading with him to spare me for the sake of the child I carried. His response was merciless. "You are nothing but a corpse, Fisher's daughter, tainted and unworthy. How dare you presume to bear my child? I'll ensure you never can again, so you might finally learn your place." The clubs fell, and blood spilled. With my dying breath, I left him with these words: "Adrian, in this life and the next, we shall never meet again in life or death." Then I turned and threw myself into the rushing waters. 5 years later, the new emperor ordered the dredging of the river to recover the ancient bronze seal that protected our realm from floods. My name appeared on the official documents as the appointed river master. Adrian knelt before the throne, grasping my hand desperately, his eyes red with anguish. "Miriam, you said we would never meet again in life or death. Why have you returned?" I smiled coldly and pushed him away. "Why do you think? I've come to collect what you owe me, your life." When Adrian saw me emerge from the shadows beside the great hall to receive the imperial decree, he looked as if lightning had struck him. "Impossible," he whispered, then suddenly lunged forward, reaching for me. "I saw you fall into the river myself. How can you still be alive? Miriam, if you didn't die, why didn't you send word these 5 years? Why didn't you return to the estate?" His voice trembled as he demanded answers. His eyes rimmed with red. I stepped aside and seized a guard's sword, striking his knee with all my strength. The sharp crack echoed through the hall as Adrian stumbled and collapsed, his face draining of color as cold sweat beaded on his brow. Standing with the blade in my hand, my voice carried the chill of winter steel. "His Majesty is present. Does General Adrian's outburst show such disrespect for the throne? Do you not know that improper conduct before the Emperor is a capital offense? If you wish to die, I can arrange it now." Silence fell like a shroud over the assembly. Adrian gritted his teeth, swallowing his pain as he looked down at his bleeding leg, then raised his eyes to mine with utter disbelief. Soon, the familiar rage and disgust I knew so well clouded his features. "This is madness," he snarled. "You are nothing but a corpse, Fisher's daughter, a mere concubine from the inner quarters. How dare you abandon your station, assume false identity, and deceive the Emperor himself? What gives you the right to hold the position of River Master?" He spun toward the dragon throne, prostrating himself with such force that his forehead struck the golden bricks repeatedly. "Your Majesty, I beg your discernment. This woman has always been cunning and unruly. Years ago, she schemed against me and harmed my beloved wife and the child she carried. Now she dares to direct her plots against your Majesty. I implore you to punish this woman severely. I ask for no mercy and am willing to forsake all family loyalty for justice." His words ignited a storm of whispers throughout the hall. Voices rose, pointing at me in recognition. "So it is her. She was considered a beauty once, but look at that terrible scar across her face now. No wonder none of us recognized her. The murmurs soon became a chorus of condemnation. The House of Stirling took her from the lowest station, a corpse, Fisher's daughter, and elevated her to become a general's wife. Latter, consumed by jealousy, she pushed Lady Celeste into the frozen waters, causing her to lose her child. Didn't she throw herself into the river in shame? How is she still alive? Truly, evil endures. These words were identical to what I had heard 5 years ago when I cast myself into the waters. Then, I had desperately tried to explain that I had done none of those things, that I had never deceived or harmed anyone. But now, standing in the Imperial Hall, I found their accusations merely tiresome and dull. At that moment, someone emerged from the crowd. Adrian's beloved, now his wife. Celeste. Upon seeing me, she trembled as if terrified, tears immediately welling in her eyes. She looked at me with apparent fear, then seemed to gather her courage and approach the throne, kneeling gracefully. Your Majesty. Her voice was soft and carried a plaintive tone. My sister has always been prone to jealousy, perhaps, hoping to regain the general's favor. She conceived this desperate scheme to deceive you. She turned to Adrian, gently tugging his sleeve, then prostrated herself before the Emperor. Though she once served the general, I beg your Majesty for lenient punishment. 100 lashes would suffice, perhaps with the character for criminal branded upon her face as a warning to others. Her words were delivered with gentle grace. Adrian gazed at her with immediately softened eyes. Celeste's heart is kind, he murmured approvingly, then turned to me with harsh reproach. Kneel and beg for mercy this instant. Looking upon this scene, I found myself laughing. I walked slowly to the center of the hall, my robes spreading across the golden floor as I knelt, raising my head toward the dragon throne. My voice remained utterly calm. Since General Adrian claims I am unfit to serve as River Master, I shall relinquish the position. The hall fell silent, every face showing surprise. I continued. Since General Adrian holds such strong opinions on this matter, perhaps he should assume the role of River Master himself. Adrian's face changed dramatically, his pupils constricting. Everyone knew that the River Master must dive to the riverbed to retrieve the bronze seal. Those waters raged perpetually with treacherous currents that had claimed countless lives. 9 of every 10 who entered never returned. Only I descended from the corpse. Fishers could snatch souls back from the river spirits, but each descent left indelible marks upon the corpse. Fisher's body, wounds that cut to the bone and left hideous scars. The scar that crossed my heart was earned when I saved Adrian from those very waters years ago. From the dragon throne, His Majesty spoke coldly. Adrian, are you willing? Adrian's lips trembled as he opened his mouth, but no words came. The Emperor's gaze turned glacial. Incompetent fool. How dare you interfere with my decisions? That single sentence sealed Adrian's fate for years to come. He collapsed in defeat while the hall's sentiment shifted instantly. Those who had supported him moments before now changed their tune. General Adrian's behavior was truly improper. Master Miriam's scars are testament to her service. She will surely retrieve the bronze seal and stem the floods. His Majesty's wisdom is boundless. I bowed in gratitude and rose to leave. As I turned, Adrian rushed forward, blocking my path. His eyes blazed with mockery and resentment. Wasn't it you who said we would never meet again in life or death? Yet here you are, not only alive but deliberately appearing before me. He stared at me, lowering his voice. Miriam, you haven't changed your mind, have you? I met his gaze with a serene smile. Adrian, I've come to collect your life. 5 years ago, I sought death in the river, but the spirits refused to take me. Then I understood. It wasn't I who deserved to die, but you. He stood stunned for a moment, then laughed coldly with familiar disdain, clearly dismissing my words as petulance. His eyes raked over me from head to toe with cutting contempt. Look how fine your clothing is now. I suppose you found yourself a new protector. Does he know you are from the cursed lineage of corpse fishers? Does he know what you've done? He sneered with venom. Or have you simply used the same base methods as before? Deceiving innocent men and climbing your way up through pregnancy. His gaze settled deliberately on my abdomen with a mixture of suspicion and calculation. I should have had them destroy your womb entirely then. You can't possibly still be. You haven't bred some bastard spawn, have you? Before he could finish, Celeste stepped forward with perfect timing. Sister, if you truly carry some stranger's child, the Sterling house cannot possibly take you back. You wouldn't even be worthy of concubine status. Adrian fell silent for a moment, then seemed to reach a decision, assuming an air of magnanimous condescension. Very well. I'll have the servants prepare some herbs to purge whatever might be there. Whether there is a bastard child or not, we'll cleanse you of whatever unclean things might be inside, and ensure you can never conceive again. He looked down at me imperiously. Now you must serve His Majesty's will. Whether through deception or with help from some lover, you must succeed. Failure is not permitted. When you earn the Emperor's favor, you will petition for my appointment as Marshal of the Realm. Then I shall allow you to return to the estate and grant you the status of honored concubine. He paused. Not a wife, perhaps, but I'll allow you to enjoy a wife's privileges within the household. Celeste's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly, and hatred flashed briefly in her eyes. Adrian noticed her clenched fist and patted it tenderly. Of course, you must first kneel before Celeste and properly apologize. You must make amends for pushing her into the lake and causing her to lose her child. I studied them both, then suddenly smiled. Very well. Celeste's eyes widened with barely concealed triumph as she positioned herself before me, waiting for my submission. Instead, I reached out and grasped her throat with 5 fingers, forcing her down into the nearby lotus pond with tremendous force. The splash sent water everywhere, as Celeste thrashed wildly, choking and crying out in broken gasps. Adrian's face transformed with rage as he rushed forward. I met him with a powerful kick that sent him tumbling into the pond as well. He flailed in the muddy water before struggling upright, covered in filth and roaring at me in fury. Standing on the bank, I looked down at him with contempt. Do you see? If I had truly pushed someone, they would be in the deep water like you, not clinging to the shore, with breath enough to weep and wail. I curved my lips in a mocking smile. Adrian, did you think I hadn't heard every word you and Celeste spoke 5 years ago? Adrian's movements froze completely. When Adrian had been sent on his mission to the Eastern Islands, he encountered a massive storm and fell into the raging waters. No one dared attempt rescue, so I dove in to save him, earning a wound that nearly split me in 2. After he recovered, Adrian sat by my bedside for 7 days without food or drink. When I finally awoke, his first words were, "Miriam, you risked your life to save mine. I have nothing to offer in return but my devotion and love." During our 3 years in the Eastern Islands, we embraced beneath the stars and loved under the aurora. He dove into treacherous waters to gather rare pearls for me, and when towering waves threatened our ship, he bound me to the prow with his own body, caring only that I might survive. But all these beautiful dreams shattered the day Adrian met Celeste. As my pregnancy progressed, Adrian's heart began to wander. During the most dangerous phase of my pregnancy, while I writhed in agony in our chambers, they met in secret in the adjoining room. Celeste's cries of pleasure drowned out my screams of pain. I dragged myself up and pushed open their door. Before I could speak, Celeste rose with tears in her eyes. "General's wife, you needn't make such a scene to catch us. I, Celeste, will never be anyone's concubine. I won't enter your household to compete for favor. I only want to give myself to the man I love. If you cannot even tolerate this, then I shall die now." With that, she threw herself against a pillar, blood streaming from her head. Adrian made me kneel in the freezing snow, saying, I could only return to our chambers when Celeste awakened. During the 10 days I lay unconscious from the cold. Adrian stripped me of my wife's status and married Celeste, citing my jealousy as justification. He proclaimed publicly, "Celeste is the treasure of my heart. No one may cause her distress. Since she refuses to be a concubine, I'll make her my wife." When people questioned this unprecedented demotion of a wife to concubine status, Adrian silenced them with a single statement. "My martial skills are such that even falling into the river, I could have escaped without help. Her rescue was merely a calculated scheme to advance her station. I've already rewarded her, but I won't be held hostage by false gratitude forever." Gradually, rumors spread that I had deliberately caused Adrian's fall to create an opportunity for advancement. Though Adrian knew this was false, he never offered correction. When I recovered enough to bring him divorce papers, I overheard him comforting Celeste. "Yes, I promise you. My children will only come from your womb. As for disposing of what she carries, I'll simply find some pretext to punish her." When Celeste threw herself into the lake, I knew they planned to move against me and my unborn child. I thought that by saving her from the water, Adrian would have no excuse to harm my baby. I was wrong. Those determined to destroy you need no excuses. Hearing my words, Adrian's brow furrowed. "What nonsense are you spouting? Whether 5 years ago or now, you deliberately tried to harm Celeste. It seems your vicious nature hasn't changed one bit." He lifted the dripping Celeste from the water, glaring at me with displeasure. "I was prepared to forgive all your past transgressions if you would only admit your wrongs, yet you refuse my mercy. Attempting to murder your mistress carries a penalty of 100 lashes, broken limbs, and sale to a brothel. Miriam, you'd better consider whether you'll bow and apologize to Celeste. Otherwise, once you retrieve the bronze seal from the river, I'll petition His Majesty for your punishment." He waited to see me cower in fear. When I only looked at him with mocking amusement, Adrian stormed away in uncontrollable rage. News of my resurrection and appointment as Rivermaster spread throughout the capital. Everyone knew the Emperor had promised to grant one wish to whoever could retrieve the bronze seal. Some couldn't resist probing, Master Miriam. Did you accept this position for the sake of that wish? Does this wish concern General Adrian? I smiled and said simply, yes. When these words reached Adrian's ears, he appeared at the river on the day of the ceremony with his entourage. Mounted on his horse, he looked down at me imperiously. Miriam, I've come to support you. When you retrieve the seal and His Majesty asks for your wish, you must think carefully. I know you still resent being relegated to concubine status and might wish to become the legitimate wife again, or perhaps ask His Majesty to banish Celeste. But Celeste is the love of my heart. If you truly make such a wish, I will never forgive you. I remained silent with a mocking smile. Undeterred, he dismounted and whispered in my ear, I promise you, if you ask His Majesty to make me Marshal of the Realm, I'll restore your position as my legitimate wife. We can keep this secret from Celeste to spare her feelings. I smiled faintly. General Adrian, I've already stated what my heart's desire is. Adrian raised an eyebrow, pondered for a moment, then smiled at me knowingly. I understand. Your wish is for me to love you. Very well, Miriam. I'll be waiting for you on the shore. Without another word, I shed my elaborate robes and dove into the churning waters. The dark currents swept broken stones past me like countless dull blades scraping against my flesh. Blood quickly spread through the water as I held my breath, descending inch by inch toward the river's heart. Finally, my fingertips touched something cold and hard. My heart clenched as I used every ounce of strength to pull the object from the mud and sand, clutching it tightly to my chest before turning upward. Suddenly, the water around me darkened. Sharp teeth sank into my arm in an explosion of agony. Saw-toothed predator fish swarmed around me, tearing at my flesh in a feeding frenzy. My eyes flew wide in recognition. Western carnivorous fish. These creatures had no business in our waters. Samanon had deliberately released them. I gritted my teeth and seized one of the fish, crushing it in my grip. As its belly burst open, I found a fishing hook among the spilled organs. The hook's handle bore a clearly carved letter C for Celeste. I laughed coldly, swept the remaining fish away, and used the current's force to break the surface. She is up. Shouts erupted from the shore. I emerged from the water heavily, hauling myself onto the bank's edge, covered in blood with my clothes soaked and wounds gaping. Celeste stood among the crowd, and seeing me alive, her eyes flashed with unmistakable shock and malice. She rushed forward, falling to her knees before me. Sister, you are bleeding. Let me help you up. She stepped down hard on my hand, gripping the bank's edge. Pain exploded through me as darkness flickered at the edges of my vision. She reached out and shoved the box in my arms back into the river. I lunged forward desperately, but caught only empty water. Celeste screamed and stumbled backward, her voice pitched high with hysteria. Sister, how could you fail to retrieve the bronze seal? Don't you know that accepting this duty and failing means execution? She leaned close, lowering her voice to an icy whisper. Did you think you could use such methods to compete with me for the position of general's wife? Dream on. I destroyed you once, and I can do it again. I raised my hand and delivered a resounding slap across her face. Celeste staggered backward, nearly falling into the river herself. Celeste! Adrian leaped from his horse and caught her in his arms. He turned to me with fury. Miriam, how dare you strike Celeste just because you failed in your task? I stood on the bank, water dripping from my clothes, looking at him with cold disdain. You stood there watching clearly. She pushed the bronze seal I worked so hard to retrieve back into the water. Didn't she deserve that slap? Adrian's eyes flickered briefly, but he quickly hardened his expression with righteous indignation. Celeste was only concerned for you, trying to help you up, and accidentally bumped into you. You dropped the seal through your own carelessness. How can you blame Celeste? I looked at him, and suddenly laughed. Adrian, you protect her so devotedly, yet you are too pathetic to realize you are nothing but a fool. I raised my hand and clapped twice. Several servants were brought forward under guard. Pointing at them, I said coldly, Don't you find it strange? Why would a minister's daughter throw herself at you without seeking status or recognition? How could someone so supposedly frail lose a child from such a brief fall into water, unless that child never actually died? Celeste's face went deathly pale as she shrieked. You are lying. My child died because you pushed me into the water. The servants pressed to their knees, looked up and cried out desperately. "Don't hurt me, I'll tell everything." The young lady was already carrying the stable master's child. When she seduced the general, she was afraid of discovery and needed to pin the pregnancy on the general. Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd. Celeste shook her head frantically. Lies, all lies. Adrian held her while swaying on his feet, looking down at her with doubt creeping into his eyes for the first time. Yet still he glared at me defiantly. "Don't think you can slander Celeste." I smiled coldly. "Bring forward the physician." The doctor was pushed to the front, falling to his knees and crying out. General's wife never miscarried that day. She gave birth prematurely to a 7-month infant. She gave me gold to take the child to a stable master outside the city. I didn't dare. So I secretly raised the child myself. A wailing infant was brought forward. Its features remarkably similar to Celeste's. Adrian's face went ashen as he nearly collapsed. He had known Celeste for only 5 months. How could she have delivered his 7-month-old child? Celeste trembled violently, unable to speak. Adrian, faced with such evidence, "Will you still refuse to believe and continue protecting her?" I asked cold. Adrian stared at Celeste, his lips quivering wordlessly. At that moment, a herald's voice rang from outside the crowd. "His Majesty arrives." Everyone knelt in unison. The Emperor's gaze swept the assembly before settling on me with icy displeasure. "Where is the bronze seal? Have you failed to retrieve it? Do you not know that accepting the role of River Master and returning empty-handed is a capital offense?" I took a deep breath and pointed toward Celeste. "Your Majesty, it was." Adrian dropped to his knees without hesitation. "Your Majesty, it is my concubine Miriam, who proved incompetent and failed to retrieve the seal. I beg your Majesty for lenient punishment, to spare her life." He looked up, meeting my emotionless gaze. Adrian realized something and spoke with panicked urgency. "Miriam, don't resent me. Celeste carries my child now. Even if she and the child is innocent." Hearing this, I smiled with derision. So General Adrian knows children are innocent, or is it only Celeste's child who deserves innocence, while mine did not? Adrian's face drained of all color. He dared not meet my eyes, his throat working as he clenched his jaw and bowed deeply once more. "Your Majesty, I am willing to share responsibility for this failure with Miriam." The hall buzzed with quiet murmurs. His voice tight with strain, he forced himself to continue. "If she bears guilt, I cannot escape blame. I only ask your Majesty for merciful judgment and reduced punishment for her." Celeste looked up sharply, tears filling her eyes as she clutched Adrian's sleeve with trembling hands. "Husband, those were mistakes of my youth, when I was deceived by evil people. I only hid the truth because I feared it would damage our love." She wept pitifully. "I loved you too much." Adrian gazed down at her, his eyes showing unmistakable disappointment. Yet, he simply closed his eyes and prostrated himself before the throne once more. The Emperor's attention turned to me. I suddenly laughed softly. "Your Majesty, as River Master, I bear sole responsibility for success or failure. Why should someone unrelated to me share my burden?" Adrian's head snapped up at my words. I looked at him with cold indifference. 5 years ago, I threw myself into the river. From that moment, I ceased to be a member of the Sterling House. My affairs have nothing to do with General Adrian. Please do not involve yourself. Adrian's breathing caught. Complex emotions churned in his eyes. "Miriam, You needn't fear involving me. This is all I can do for you now. Please don't refuse me. He seemed to grasp at his last hope, turning desperately toward the Emperor. Your Majesty, I am Miriam's husband. I wish to share her fate. Enough. The Emperor frowned with obvious irritation. Guards. Attendants stepped forward to restrain Adrian, as he was dragged away, still staring at me intently. Miriam, don't worry, I'll kneel here until His Majesty agrees to spare your life. His voice cracked. If something truly happens to you, I'll bury you with full honors, as my wife beside my own grave. In death, we'll share the same tomb. I looked at him and smiled. General Adrian, you needn't concern yourself with my burial. You should worry about yourself instead. With that, I stepped forward and knelt again before His Majesty. From within my robes, I slowly withdrew a small box. Opening it, I revealed the ancient bronze seal lying quietly within. The hall fell into stunned silence. Celeste's pupils contracted as she blurted out, "How dare you use a fake to deceive?" Her words died as Adrian lunged forward, clamping his hand over her mouth. His gaze fixed on the bronze seal, his breathing rapid and shallow. I took in this scene with casual interest, raising an eyebrow slightly. Adrian's face finally showed undisguised joy. He struggled toward me, his bonds restraining him. Miriam, thank heaven, I knew you were clever enough to retrieve the seal. You are safe now. You'll be fine. You frightened me so terribly. He opened his arms, wanting to embrace me. Before he could approach, my guards seized and held him fast. The Emperor rose, his gaze falling on the bronze seal with clear satisfaction. Excellent. The bronze seal is restored. It shall be enshrined immediately to calm the waters. With matters settled, the Emperor turned back to me. Miriam, speak your wish. I shall grant whatever you desire. Silence filled the hall as Adrian's eyes fixed desperately upon me. I was about to speak when Adrian interrupted urgently, struggling to lift his head despite his restraints. His voice dropped to an intimate whisper. Miriam, I know what is in your heart. His eyes reddened with what seemed like newfound devotion. Don't worry. I understand now that you are the only one who truly loves me. I was blinded before, he continued eagerly. You needn't petition His Majesty. I promise to restore your position as legitimate wife. He paused, glancing at Celeste. Celeste was sobbing uncontrollably, throwing herself against his neck as tears soaked his robes, her voice trembling softly. Husband, don't send me away. I want nothing else, only to stay by your side, even as a concubine. Adrian's eyes showed obvious reluctance and tenderness, yet he still pushed her away gently. Celeste, please step back. He turned to me with careful consideration. Miriam, you'll remain my legitimate wife, and Celeste can serve as concubine. When she bears her child, I'll place it under your care to call you mother. He even adopted what he believed was a magnanimous expression. Consider it my way of giving you a child in return. I watched him, raising an eyebrow slightly. Then I turned toward the dragon throne with calm composure. Your Majesty, General Adrian repeatedly presumes to make decisions on your behalf. Such disrespect toward the sovereign. What punishment does the law prescribe? The atmosphere grew thick and oppressive. The emperor's already strained patience finally snapped completely. He didn't even bother looking at Adrian, merely raising his hand. Beat him. The guards stepped forward. The sound of military clubs striking flesh echoed clearly and dully throughout the hall. Adrian's body tensed, then went completely limp after the 10th blow. After 20 strikes, he was drenched in cold sweat, managing only suppressed whimpers, dragged back into kneeling position. He tearfully prostrated himself before the emperor. "Your Majesty, I beg you, please allow me to speak with Miriam once more." The emperor looked at him coldly but didn't intervene further. Adrian turned to me, his voice hoarse. "Miriam, I know you are angry. If you truly cannot bear to see Celeste again, once she delivers the child, I'll send her away. Far away, where she'll never trouble you again." He spoke with desperate urgency. Celeste, hearing this, fainted from grief in his arms. Adrian held her with conflicted emotions, yet still looked up at me with near anguished pleading. "You risked your life diving for the seal for my sake. I swear I'll never fail you again." I listened and suddenly laughed. The sound wasn't loud, yet it rang clearly throughout the hall. "For your sake? Indeed, this was for you." I knelt down slowly. "Your Majesty, my wish is not to become a legitimate wife, nor do I need Celeste and Adrian separated." At these words, Adrian's head shot up. Ecstatic joy exploded in his eyes as he nearly lost control of his emotions. "Miriam, I knew you were the most understanding. I swear I will never disappoint you." I raised my head. My voice rang clear and steady. "My wish is made on their behalf." Adrian froze. Before he could react, I had already spoken aloud. "I petition your Majesty to thoroughly investigate Adrian and Celeste for the crime of treason." Chaos erupted throughout the hall. Order collapsed at the front of the assembly, as voices rose in shocked exclamation. "Treason, that is a crime punishable by death and the extinction of bloodlines. Master Miriam would never dare speak such words without evidence." Adrian remained stunned for a moment. Then rage consumed him. He whipped around to glare at me, his face livid as he ground out through clenched teeth. "Miriam, have you lost your mind? How can you make such accusations out of mere jealousy?" His voice trembled. Yet he maintained his condescending reproach. "I already promised you, I'll send Celeste away. What more do you want? Don't you have any capacity for mercy?" Celeste's face went deathly pale as she threw herself to her knees. She bowed repeatedly toward me, weeping inconsolably. "Mistress, I understand your hatred toward me, but you shouldn't drag my husband down because of me." She looked up at me with pitiful eyes. "If it comes to this, I'll simply die. Then surely you'll spare my husband." She rose suddenly, making as if to throw herself into the river again. I spoke coldly. "Even if you jump, the charge of treason remains unchanged." Celeste's steps faltered. She stared at the churning waters, her body recoiling sharply. "Ah!" After a piercing scream, she collapsed softly by the bank, apparently fainting from overwhelming grief, but Adrian had completely lost his composure. He rushed forward, pulling her into his arms, then turned to roar at me. "Venomous woman! You poisonous creature! Your Majesty, you must not believe her. She seeks only revenge. Her heart is purely malicious." But the Emperor wasn't looking at him. He focused solely on me, his tone measured and cold. "Since you make this claim, you must have evidence." I nodded, My gaze fell upon Adrian's face. General Adrian, do you know the identity of the stable master at the Sterling House? Adrian's mind reeled. I spoke with deliberate calm. He was an enemy agent planted within our kingdom. In Adrian's arms, Celeste's entire body convulsed violently. Adrian instinctively protested, "Impossible. You are lying." I smiled lightly. When I threw myself into the river, I expected certain death. Instead, the current carried me all the way to enemy territory. There I happened to save the enemy emperor's only heir. The hall gradually quieted. In gratitude, he agreed to a ceasefire. He also revealed a secret to me. I drew a bundle of letters from my sleeve, the pages scattered across the floor. A list of our kingdom's traitors. My voice remained steady. Minister Sterling's name appears prominently on that list. And that so-called stable master was the enemy agent planted in Minister Sterling's household. To steal our military defense plans, Miss Celeste deliberately approached you. I looked directly at Adrian. Open your eyes and look carefully. Are these defense diagrams not drawn in your own hand? Adrian knelt motionless on the ground. The next instant, he shoved Celeste away and frantically began gathering the scattered letters and maps from the floor. One by one, every document bore defense plans that had originated from his general's mansion. Celeste trembled uncontrollably, shaking her head desperately. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Before she could finish her denial, crack. Adrian struck her down with a vicious blow. He completely lost control, raining senseless punches upon her body. Cursed witch. I gave you my whole heart. For your sake, I wronged the woman who saved my life. For your sake, when you said you couldn't bear for another to bear my children, I arranged the death of my own child. And you were deceiving me from the very beginning. Celeste wailed and pleaded desperately for mercy. Blood soon spread across the ground. In this chaos, the child she carried was lost to the brutal beating. Adrian finally stopped, his whole body shaking. He suddenly threw himself prostrate before the throne. He wept bitterly. Your Majesty, I was ignorant. I was deceived. I had no idea she was an agent planted at my side. Then he crawled on his knees to me. His forehead struck the ground repeatedly. Miriam, I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. I shouldn't have let her blind me to wronging you and our child. Please petition His Majesty for mercy. Please give me a chance to atone. I promise to love you wholeheartedly and make amends for my mistakes. I looked at him with complete indifference. The Emperor's voice rang out. Master Miriam, this counts as another service to the crown. Name your reward. He looked at me. I grant you one additional wish. Adrian seemed to seize upon this final lifeline. He crawled several steps on his knees, prostrating himself before me as his forehead struck the ground again and again. Please ask His Majesty to spare my life. His voice was raw, nearly pleading. I truly know my wrongs now. I shouldn't have listened to her lies or moved against you and our child. Give me one more chance, please. I'll remember how you saved me, and however you treat me from now on will be acceptable. You can beat me or berate me, and I won't resist. I promise I'll love you properly. There will be no one else. I'll love only you with my whole heart. I looked at him. After a long silence, I suddenly smiled. Hope flickered in Adrian's eyes. Originally, I began, I intended to petition His Majesty for your execution. His face went white. I continued. But now I think death would be too merciful for you. I turned and bowed to the emperor. I petition you to exile both Adrian and Celeste to enemy territory. Whether they live or die there depends entirely on their own fortune. At my words, Adrian's head shot up, his eyes wide with terror. No, I cannot go, he cried out desperately. I am a general. I am their greatest enemy. If I go there, they will surely torture me to death. He struggled to stand but was pinned down by the guards. I looked at him. My tone remained level. This is exactly what you deserve. Those defense plans you leaked caused the deaths of how many soldiers? They died because of your betrayal. Now it is your turn to die. Adrian trembled all over, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. The emperor glanced at him once. His expression remained cold. Granted, since the enemy nation had declared peace, the emperor ordered all captured spies and prisoners within the kingdom to be transferred along with Adrian and Celeste later. I learned what befell them. On the road to exile, Celeste awakened to discover that Adrian had beaten their unborn child to death with his own hands. Weeping, she clawed and fought with Adrian in desperation, but he no longer felt any tenderness toward her, only hatred for her deception, and the ruin it had brought him. He beat half her face into a grotesque ruin, with venomous spite. Celeste spat blood and broken teeth. I will never forgive you. She sought out the man who had posed as a stable master, sobbing out her story. Throughout the journey, she directed all her hatred toward tormenting Adrian. She had her lover brutally abuse Adrian, and before they even reached the enemy border, 3 of his limbs were broken. He could only lie on a cart, watching helplessly as Celeste embraced her paramour with loving affection. On the final night before crossing into enemy territory, rain fell. Adrian suddenly went mad. He dragged Celeste with him as they both tumbled into the raging river. Carnivorous fish swarmed in the waters. Within moments, both their forms vanished beneath the surface. As for me, due to my service in calming the river and exposing the traitors, His Majesty appointed me as minister, making me the first woman to hold such a position in our kingdom's history. I oversaw river management, flood control, and irrigation systems. For decades thereafter, I personally inspected waterways, built dikes, and directed water flow. The floods ceased their rampage. The people found peace. Later generations erected a monument by the riverside in my honor. The inscription bore no official title, only a simple phrase, "These waters flow in peace." In this life, I emerged from the river's depths, and finally, I left the river to those who deserve to live.